Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the CTE TEACH Distance Learning and Social Emotional Learning webinar. I almost said podcast, been doing that so long. And we want to thank you all so much for being here today. My name is Christopher McClung, and I'll introduce my team with me. And so, as I said, I'm Christopher McClung. I'm at the Colton Redlands Yucaipa Regional Occupational Program. I'm a curriculum developer for our district, but I also serve in the CTE TEACH grant. And go ahead and introduce yourself, Kathy. She's working on it. So, and then with me, there you are. Hi.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Quiggle, and I'm the Program Support Specialist for Educational Services, and I'm also assisting Christopher McClung with CTE TEACH.
Awesome. And then Melissa Dix, are you here as well?
I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone. So nice to see so many of you. I am CRI-ROPS Director of Education Services and former CTE TEACH Project Coordinator. So CTE TEACH is near and dear to my heart, and just excited that we could put this together. And I see so many of our people and our grant recipients here, and just nice to see faces in this time we're going through right now.
Yeah, very cool. Well, again, welcome everyone. Wanted to give you our agenda for today. So we're going to start with a really quick icebreaker. Then I'll go over what some of the norms are for this webinar, and then we're going to get into our presenter, and she will discuss social emotional learning online and some tech tools that you can use for distance teaching as well. So to start with our icebreaker, I have a Menti for us, and what you can do is go on to another page or just use a second device, and you're going to go to menti.com and use the code 867796. And so the question is, in an imaginary place and an imaginary time, if you have an entire day free on your calendar, how would you spend it? Would you be a media maestro, meaning that you stay home and you would love to play video games and watch movies? Are you a noon napper, meaning you'll sleep till the afternoon, maybe a little bit longer? Do you prefer books and beverages? Are you a distance driver, meaning you want to just get on the open road, drive, determining where the destination might take you? Or are you a sports and sunshine person? Do you want to get out and go swimming, biking, running, hiking, and just be out in the sunshine and enjoy your afternoon? Awesome. We have some great responses already. A lot of sports and sunshine people. It must be the weather we have today. It's a great day for getting outside, swimming. If you're like me, pull your hammock out of the garage and just sit, maybe combine napping and being in the sun. Very cool. That's awesome. I think I personally want to be a sports and sunshine person, but I naturally gravitate to being the media maestro. I have aspirations to get out and exercise, but Netflix is always calling my name, and it's like, this is easier. Very cool. And so while you guys are doing this, I also wanted to let you know when our presenter talks about the social emotional learning, she is also going to have something very similar to Menti, to where she's going to have you use a code to log in. I want to encourage you, if you want to follow along on your phone or on an iPad, or even open up a second screen on your device, that way you can get a code when she gives it to you, and you have that available to follow along with her as she's presenting. So we'll continue on. We go back to our presentation. So very cool, a lot of sports and sunshine people. And so some of our norms for today, I want to encourage you all to please mute your microphone. If you've not done so already, you just want to make sure that not everybody would be able to hear what's going on in the background around you. If you might have kids who are barking or dogs that are crying, you want to make sure you mute all of that. And then we want to encourage you to use chat. The chat is open right now. Please feel free to interact with each other during this presentation, during this webinar, and just discuss some things that you've encountered or things that are you think are neat. And while you are chatting, Kathy is going to compile questions that you may have for our presenter, or even for CTE TEACH at the end of the webinar, and then she'll discuss those questions with us. We'll go ahead and answer them for you. And then again, just kind of be conscious of your environment. Most of us have our audio muted. However, we may still have people might be able to see your background and whatnot. Again, just be mindful of what's going on behind you. And with that being said, I would like to introduce to you Wendy McClung. We coincidentally have the same exact last name, and that is because we will be sharing our 9-year anniversary in about 2 weeks. But Wendy is a fantastic educator. She is one of our mental health instructors. She's a Google educator that is level 1 and 2. She has a bachelor's in psychology from Grand Canyon University, and she is presenting all this because she is an inspirational educator. And with all that being said, I will turn it over to Wendy.
All right, well, thank you so very much. I'm going to switch over to a different screen. You guys should be seeing a screen that says joinpd.com. And on that screen has a Pear, who's telling you to log in. And so what you will do is in your additional browser or other device, you're going to open a web browser and go to joinpd.com and enter the code KIWHB. And in case you need a little help with that, it is Keen Incentives Wish Hilarious Bandanas. I love that Pear Deck does this. It just makes it so much easier for students to identify letters that look alike. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a few minutes to log in, but I know Chris will also be, or Kathy will also be entering the website and the code into chat. So in case anybody misses it or their device is kind of running slow, it'll be in the chat. So, all right. Still see some people logging in, and let's see. There we go. Okay, so now it's in chat. So if you need the direct link, it is there if it makes it easier for you. I understand not everybody is able to use this device, but essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the student view of this presentation. And in my screen, I'm going to show you the teacher view so that you will learn how to use this great tool that I'm presenting today, and also how to use it for social emotional learning of our students. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And thank you very much to Chris for introducing me. Everything he said on the screen is true. I absolutely love using technology. I've been using it for quite a while. But my other passion is mental health, because I am a mental health instructor. So I kind of wanted to find a way to combine the best of both worlds. And this is how I came up with an idea that helps assess and support social emotional learning with our students. So on your screen, you're going to notice that I'm walking you through a presentation. You don't have a lot of control over going back and forward. However, you should see in front of you a screen that says temperature check. And this is a way that I assess students and how they're feeling, how they're doing. You will see a purple little line that goes down this scale. And a 0 means you're in a good space and you can focus. And a 10 means that you really can't manage your emotions right now. You're feeling very emotionally overwhelmed. So if you could do me a favor and drag that purple icon to wherever you're feeling right now. And please, of course, be honest. Let's just face it, we're all in a very different climate than we were just a few months ago. So we want to make sure that we assess how we're feeling at this moment. So I've got about 45 responses. I'm going to show you what this looks like on my end. We can see this temperature check screen. But if I go down and I click show responses, I'm going to see these responses overlapping each other. And so this is a really good way, and yes, students can still move around their, everyone's dragging it around to see what it does. They can still, teacher can see about where your students are. And there's a few ways you can do this. You can have them overlapping, or you can put them out in a grid layout where you can see individual students a little more clearly. So this would be a way, and my computer might run a little slow off and on through this presentation. Hopefully it'll catch up, but you can see it in a grid layout, or you can see it in a different layout that allows you to scroll through them. I'm gonna go ahead and hide these responses. So as you can see, I use this as a temperature check of the room to see the stress level of the students. And I definitely think it's a great tool that Pear Deck has designed that can basically check the temperature of your room. All right, so let's review a little bit about social emotional learning. So this, again, is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. And it's near and dear to my heart for a few reasons. Number one is, of course, mental health is very important in our students. And then again, I believe that there is a very strong tie between social emotional learning and CTE. In the advisories I have gone to, a lot of skills that I'm going to share with you are actually shared by our panels, that they're looking for these particular skills in future employees. So they're really important to share and to help our students with. And the first one is self-awareness. So that includes identifying emotions, recognizing our strengths and weaknesses, and developing a growth mindset that we may not be where we want to be. However, we're working towards becoming a better, wiser, stronger person. So that is self-awareness. Self-management is managing our emotions, controlling our impulses, and setting goals. And within this, we see a lot of differences. Even when you're teaching high school from 9th grade to 12th grade, there's a lot of brain development that happens in that period, especially in the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex, where we have a lot of maturity that happens in those 4 years. So teaching them self-management and how to control their impulses is a really good skill that we demonstrate for them. Social awareness is basically creating empathy. One thing I've learned is that students, when they're coming from their background and their own individual background, they don't tend to understand a lot of different people's perspectives, different cultures, different belief systems, and it really helps to create a culture of self-awareness and also empathy. So I really like trying to appreciate the diversity in my classroom. Especially I teach ethics in healthcare, and that's a really big area where we have to appreciate diversity. Relationship skills would be communication, compassion, conflict resolution, also so important for work and so important for all the future relationships in our lives. So we want to teach them how to develop those skills and how to communicate effectively, and also how to maintain those relationships. And finally, responsible decision-making, where we are empowering them to think through the consequences of their actions. So we want to give them that forethought, like, okay, so do you want to make this decision, or do you think that's going to be a poor decision to make, and why do you think that? So making them pause and take an assessment of what behaviors they're currently considering and how the outcomes might affect them in the future. So I would like you guys to please chime in and let me know, what would you say are the biggest social emotional challenges that your students, or maybe what your teachers are saying that their students are currently facing? And this is a write-in response. You can just, you should see a box that has a text option or a drawing option. And so I'm going to show these on my screen. And you can see the overlap feature doesn't apply here because obviously that's not going to work, but we can see it like this or in a grid. Students have checked out, absolutely. I feel that. I'm still trying to pull them in. Not being able to complete schoolwork because of family dynamics. Fear, I see a lot of fear and isolation. I see depression, being away from teachers and friends, just really great responses here. And I think I've seen a lot of these in my students. I even had a parent email me and say that she was just diagnosed with cancer during this, and her son still doesn't know. And it really just tugged at my heartstrings, because I just thought, he's already in bad shape. What's going to happen when she tells him about her diagnosis? And so these are the things that I'm assessing, and I'm making the appropriate referrals to counseling and such. But it is really difficult when we're seeing students struggle. And I'm just scrolling through some of these: pressuring to fit in, worried about their parents' financial issues. So you guys did a really good job of identifying a lot of things that our students are going through right now. So I'm going to discuss a little bit about this and touch on a lot of the things you said. So we already identified that there are some parents who are either working way over what they normally work because they're essential workers, healthcare workers, which puts even more fear into our students, or maybe they got laid off or their small business is in jeopardy and unemployment's taking a long time. So there's a lot of different factors that we're looking at here with income. Students' stress levels are elevated because of uncertainty. When will I see my teacher, my friends? What's going to happen to my mom? What's going to happen to my loved one who has a diagnosis of COVID-19? So we see a lot of that. Multiple people using the same device. We're very fortunate in our home that most of our children have their own devices, but in other homes we have people who are working from home and their children have to share that same device. So we're seeing that need for asynchronous learning. And also just seeing like that students sometimes can't even get on until late at night. And they might even be serving as babysitters for their family. Feeling overwhelmed by the changes, especially if they weren't used to using technology before. Now they not only have to keep learning, but also learn in a different way. Diminished support systems. So our support systems at school are not available as they were before. So, we know that every teacher has we want to have that connection to our students. And sometimes we might be the only positive person our student runs into in their day. They might have parents who are not available, or maybe they don't have their biological parents living with them and they have foster care. So the support systems with counseling, with our SROs, with the teachers, and also their peers are just missing right now. And that's a really big deal. And finally, food instability. Although you might have food, or you might have the income to purchase food, it's been really kind of hit and miss if you go to the grocery store. And I know for our family, we've been trying to, we would get messaged by our Instacart person, like, hey, this isn't available. And so especially the first few weeks of this, it was really a struggle. So there might be food instability either because they are no longer receiving an income, or that the food is just not available that they're used to making or they can afford. And if you look in the center here, you will see a triangle you may or may not recognize. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs in a beautiful summary of what those look like. So to explain this, if you haven't seen it before, the bottom need is our basic human need, which is our physiological needs. And that includes food, water, sleep. So those are our basic needs. If you step up from there, you see safety, which means you have a home to live in, a place to stay where you feel safe. You're safe from violence. You are safe from anything that would be, cause fear or anxiety. And then if you look up from there, we have love and belonging with our relationship building, the esteem that we feel, our self-esteem being elevated, and then self-actualization is at the very top, and that means you're living to your highest potential. So the way this hierarchy works is if you don't meet the needs at the bottom, you can't climb up these tiers to get to the top. And if you notice, a lot of these things we identified are just in the lower two tiers. So we also have to recognize that when we're looking at those lower two tiers, they might not be able to get up to those next three. And that's just where we are right now. And so focusing on meeting those lower two tiers really makes a difference with our students, and just trying to provide those basic needs for them and ensure that they feel safe and that they have the physiological needs that they need. So how do we as educators bridge that gap? Oh, I'm so sorry, I skipped ahead. We need to shift our paradigm of teaching, which means that we need to start prioritizing differently. That means that we look at the social emotional needs before we worry about how well they're performing in their curriculum. We just want to make sure that they are good to go, that fundamentally that they are strong. And then, for example, having a student complete a worksheet is good, but how do we also teach them how to focus and concentrate on that worksheet? And how do we help them adapt positive habits. Refocusing our priorities. So what are the most important things that we can teach our students right now? Are we building those relationships? What kinds of things that do you need as an adult that we can teach them as teens or as younger students? So how do we teach them how to handle stress? How do we teach them how to manage their emotions? And we are their example sometimes. When and I don't know if you guys have had this experience when you get on a Zoom call and everything goes wrong and kids are running in behind you in the room. You know, sometimes that causes stress in us, but we have to convey to them that these are normal things and that this is kind of like our new norm. Which brings me to my next point, which is we have to normalize the abnormal. And I really feel like this is something that we have to kind of take a step back and realize that we're human, we're all human, and having human emotion is really it's just okay. And so acknowledging that this is stressful is good. Just really kind of creating this environment that, you know, things are not what they used to be, and I feel it too, and my kids feel it, and I'm feeling a lot of the same emotions as you, and that's really okay. That's normal to feel the way you're feeling. Unconditional positive regard is a great tool I have been using over the last year or so. My friend is a marriage and family counselor, and she taught me this skill just, you know, presenting to our class, and I thought it was great. So what that means is no matter what mistakes or bad choices your students make, you are always holding them in a positive light. So for example, when a student makes a bad choice, I can validate, you know, you really did make that choice, but you know what, I think that you did it because you felt this, you know, you felt this way, and that's okay. So I think that you can make great choices in the future. And how do you think you would do that? And so really just letting them know you're not judging, you're not here to criticize them. And even when they do make mistakes, it's okay to admit you make a mistake because you're still a safe person to come to. And finally, validation of emotions. So if a student writes you and says, you know, I feel overwhelmed, I feel stressed, you can reply to them in an email or in a Zoom call and say, thank you so much for sharing what you're feeling. And I acknowledge that you feel that way. And I can't imagine being in your shoes, or saying something like, I'm here to support you. So validating that they're having emotions that you might not be experiencing because their situation is so much different. So that kind of wraps up a little bit of the social emotional learning. And I want to bring you all to the more interactive portion of my presentation, which is Pear Deck. So if you weren't already familiar, this little pear right here is our little Pear Deck mascot. And Pear Deck is an add-on for either Google or Microsoft, and Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint. And it's designed to increase our engagement with our students and also create a way for us to assess them formatively. And I'm going to show you some examples of that shortly. Why do I personally love Pear Deck? As you can see, I went to ISTE with Chris last year, and we got a chance to meet the Pear Deck people, and that was pretty cool. So first of all, it's really easy to use. It's really easy to use. The setup is really simple. It's just an add-on. It can be accessed from any web browser, meaning that you don't have to download software or have students log in other than just the code. That's it. The templates are really versatile and easy to customize for your lesson. And it also allows students or teachers to assess the social, emotional, and understanding of the content matter for their students. And the really cool thing I like about it is that when I'm hosting a live session, I can actually do one of two things. I can host it live like I'm doing right now, or I can do a student-paced session where students click a link and log in. They get a chance to access the information asynchronously. So if they can't make the live session, they can always review with the student-paced session, which is really cool. And now Pear Deck has just added the availability of recording audio over slides. So students who do better, who learn differently, and they need that auditory explanation, you can add audio to each slide. Now, before I move forward, I just want to give you this disclaimer. I don't actually work for Pear Deck. I happen to really love it, which is great, but I don't work for Pear Deck. I am a teacher who just happens to use it, and I was so excited to share all this information with you guys. So, which of the following best describes your experience with Pear Deck before today's meeting? So you should see a multiple choice option in front of you. And I would just like to just see where you guys are at with it. Either you have never heard of it, you've heard of it but haven't used it, you've heard of Pear Deck and you've tried it before, or you are a regular user of Pear Deck. So I'll give everybody just a minute to weigh in. It kind of helps me to also assess where my, what I'm presenting, just to kind of make sure I know who my audience is. And as a teacher, you can use this multiple choice to do an assessment of your students before you present information. And this to me is a great tool because I like being able to know where they're at, either emotionally or where they are at with their understanding of the content before I start presenting it, because I want to meet them at their level. And so it looks like most people have either heard of it or haven't used it, but have never heard of it. So you're experiencing it as a student right now, and I'm going to show you some more things that Pear Deck can do. How do you know your students are engaged? So this is like the $1 million question right now, because when we're in the classroom, it looks way different than when we are distance learning. So I was curious and I wanted to get some feedback from my very smart, very diverse group I have here. How do you assess student engagement both in a classroom and while distance learning? So it's kind of tricky. And again, you should see the option to insert text with the capital letter T in front of you. So you could just click that and plug it into underneath either column. And I'm going to take a look at some of these responses. Some people are just drawing. And that's the other really cool thing, is that if you have younger students, that maybe can't type, you have a chance to let them draw. And that's really neat too. So I see not everybody is responding yet, but some of the responses I'm seeing are that they ask questions, that they're asking for help, and they're looking at you. They make that eye contact. So when you walk around, you can like visually see that they're engaged. Randomization tools, the output of work assigned. So it's, and oh, I like the equity sticks. I like that because you can pull students' names out and just ask them questions to see if they understand what you're saying. When we get over to with distance learning, I have found that this is just really hard to assess, because how are you supposed to know that they're engaged? They might come to a Zoom meeting, but you and I all know that students don't like to be on camera, so they could be sleeping for all you know. Or they just handed the phone to their little sister and said, here, listen to this, give me the summary. So I was trying to figure out a way to just see who was going through everything. But I see some really good other answers, which are like submitting submitted samples of proof of work. And so asking questions from your Google assignments, attending Zoom meetings, okay. And I really like the joking around thing. That helps build those relationships. Someone said joking around when you're not recording, and when you turn off recording. Yeah, you know, I always like to really kind of do something lighthearted during my Zoom meetings. So I think this is pretty good response here. And I think this is like the $1 million question, is how do you know students are engaged in our distance learning? So I'm going to show you a few tools that Pear Deck offers, and I would love for you guys to participate in these different tools. So this is a ranking system that Pear Deck offers. And my question to you is, using the numbers below, rank your top priorities for distance learning, with 1 being the highest and 5 being the lowest. of these 5. So it's to ensure that all of my students are logging in and doing their work, to support the social and emotional needs of my students, to be able to provide a flexible classroom for students who cannot log in during office hours, to find new ways to engage them and keep their interest, or to assess their understanding of a new topic. Now, if you see the numbers and you're not quite sure what to do with them, all you have to do is drag them up to the line where you would rank them. And so I'm going to give you some other examples of what you can use this for. If you don't want to do social emotional learning with it, another tool you can use this for is to have them do sequences of events. So for example, I'm a medical teacher, and so I would say, okay, what is the proper steps? Put them in order of how you would take blood pressure. What are the proper steps of changing oil in a car? What would be the proper steps of creating a sprite for a video game? So it's different things you can use, but the concept is still the same, that you want them to be able to identify what comes first, next, and subsequently, because sometimes these are safety issues, especially when you're working in with mechanical equipment or with patients who you could potentially hurt. So it's a really cool tool, and I'm just going to show you what this one looks like. I can see different people's rankings. I'm going to do the grid view because you can see just a little bit more. You can overlay this one though. So, all right. So this is what this looks like on my end, and I can see who has it correct and who does not. Another way you can use Pear Deck is to have your students draw a line to identify and label different parts. So this is great for either geographical locations of events. You can use a map. You can use whatever image that you are studying in your class. I used to teach more anatomy, so this is a great tool to have them identify parts of an organ or maybe parts of the body. But again, you can use it for anything like, identifying engine parts, or maybe identifying, different parts of a video game, and you just give them a label and you say, okay, what's this, or genres or something like that. So I really like the fact that you can allow them to demonstrate their understanding of what you just taught them. And if you're not sure, I always get people who are very confused. So right ventricle and left ventricle, my medical teachers think this is the easiest thing in the world, but maybe some other students think this is a little harder. But it helps them to identify where things are, and they just draw a line. There is also a drag option as well. So they might be able to drag the icon over, but in this case, I just had them drawing a line to it. Now, if you're using a phone to look at like this, so you should be able to see on your screen like a split screen, and on one side it will have a website, and on the other side is the provoking question that I'm asking about the website. In this case, I have an agriculture website that lists different college degree programs that an agriculture student might be interested in. So I really would encourage you guys, if you want them to read some content, this is a great way for them to scroll through some content during your presentation. And I wouldn't make it terribly long because you don't want to take a lot of time with them reading, especially students who read at different paces, but it's a really great way to share information with them. And you will also be able to ask subsequent questions about the content in future slides. So you can add more slides to this particular presentation after the website. And it just gives you a tool to have them read something, almost like a hyperdoc, where you can plug in a link to a different document or a website that allows you to allow them to explore the content. Now, here is another slide I have used for social emotional learning, and I want to demonstrate how I did this and why. So as you can see, you have options below to explain or describe what your emotional roller coaster looks like. So in the right upper or left upper corner, you have a worm coming out of an apple. It's like a kiddie roller coaster. To the right of that is the Matterhorn at Disneyland, which is not too bad, but if you have a bad back, it kind of, shakes you up a little bit. The one below the apple one is Viper at Six Flags that I used to go on when I was young and I can no longer do. And the one to the right of Viper is obviously photoshopped, but you can probably relate to that emotional roller coaster. And you're just going to take that red triangle with the exclamation point in it, and you're going to drag it to where you are now. And again, as a teacher, I could show responses like this. So you're going to be able to also take the temperature of where your students are with this. But one thing I did specifically in this was I actually wanted students to have a visual representation of emotional feelings. There are students out there who maybe aren't as articulate as others, or they're younger, or maybe they have special needs. And while they can't type well, or they have some kind of barrier there, they can relate to a picture. And so they can tie in what they're learning or their emotions into some sort of picture representation. So I like doing that. And it looks like some of you guys are really in that like photoshopped area there. I myself probably would be in the Matterhorn because I'm coasting right now, but definitely when that Yeti comes around, it's a little scary. So, all right, so let me show you a little bit more social emotional learning tools. This is a template from Pear Deck, and this actually is one I did not modify at all. And it says, what is filling your bucket today and what is draining it? And what I like about this slide is it creates this, this mindfulness in the student. Because sometimes we just go through the motions and we really don't think about how we're feeling, the things that are positive in our life, but also identifying those things that are maybe draining you. So I'm not going to share this one only because I don't want people to feel like I'm revealing their emotions on the screen for everybody to see. But this is a great tool for people to just be mindful about how you're feeling. And then once you've identified the positive and negative things that are affecting you, you can try to get more of that positive or really appreciate that positive, and maybe look at the things that are draining you and think, can I somehow reduce or eliminate these things in my life? So this is a great tool for that, is just creating that awareness with students. So just to wrap it up, I'm just trying to convey all this stuff to you, teach you a tool. I know it's a lot of information, but we want to shift our paradigm of teaching to focus more on what's important right now, what are our priorities, looking and refocusing those priorities on what really meets the emotional needs of our students and their basic needs. Normalizing the abnormal, letting students know it's okay to feel overwhelmed, that maybe you feel a little stressed out. I will also share that one of my students felt like they couldn't manage their time. And I shared back on a Zoom call, hey, I felt the same way. I really was overwhelmed. And then I pulled out my planner and I showed it to her. In fact, I have it here. And I said, here's what I'm doing. And I opened it up and I showed her it's color coded, and I have all these really cool tools in there, like little stars, and I can check things off. And I showed her a way to cope with her normal feelings that really helped her. Unconditional positive regard. Even if a student has been really difficult for you, I can probably say pretty safely that that student probably needs the most love and the most attention and the most positivity, because they're probably reacting to something in their life that's created that negativity. So just remember that we can always uplift our students and build them up. I always attach, when I give feedback and actionable feedback on my assignments, I'm always trying very hard to start it with something positive. I really like how you did this. Even if it was a terrible assignment, I might even just say, if it's really, really rushed through and it's not what I asked for, I can say something like, thank you for taking the time to submit this. It's something positive, and if you start with positive, usually it helps. And then finally, validation of emotions, thanking them for sharing their emotions, not trying to downplay or negate their emotions, but just acknowledging that they exist. Because right now we're all going through some different emotions. And I would love for you guys to check out Pear Deck. The website is right here, peardeck.com. They also have a Twitter page and a YouTube channel. And that YouTube channel for you beginning users who maybe are trying to learn it or just maybe not as tech savvy as some of your peers, it actually walks you through every step. It shows you how to do it. It's really simple. So I like their YouTube channel because it goes from everywhere from beginners to advanced users with Pear Deck. They do some amazing things with Pear Deck. I have to say, some of the things I've seen are so innovative. But I love this tool. Again, I use it in my presentations that I do live, and asynchronously, I post the link on my Google Classroom so students can follow it, and I can still get that feedback from students even as they're self-pacing at whatever time they can get to the assignment. And here we have an entire list, and all of these are links to the websites. So we have interactive tools here, including Pear Deck, but some of these you might already be familiar with, like Flipgrid or Padlet. We also have some links for tech experts, people who are really tech savvy in the teacher world, and they give great advice and ideas. Some links for parent engagement, virtual field trips, student feedback. You saw Mentimeter today, so that was kind of cool. And additional tools, and at the bottom there is a link for SEL learning for distance learning, so that's pretty cool. All right, so wrapping up, I would love for you to please share the most important thing you learned from today's session. You should be able to write your text in a box. It will help me to know what was most helpful for you, and also for, and we're gonna review it and look at them together and just pick out some key points. All right, so I'm seeing some really good feedback. My computer's running just a tad slow, so I apologize. We can still care for our students from a distance using these tools, and there's so many tools we can use. This is just one tool in our toolbox, but I think the most important tool that we can use is just being human. And you don't have to be a therapist, you don't have to be a licensed counselor, you guys don't have to be mental health experts to address social emotional learning. You just have to be human. And I think that's one thing I want to really encourage, is not to be afraid to be human with these students. They really need people who allow them to be human too. The social emotional temperature gauge is really good. One way I use that is if I feel like they're really stressed out, I might decide to the next week or with the next assignment, just shorten it a little bit or make it different. Because one of the reasons they might be feeling overwhelmed is because there's too much work. And I do ask questions like that with my students. How are you doing? Is it too much work? Is it, you know, not exciting? Like, tell me what you think. Most of them are pretty honest. They will tell you. Emotional awareness is a key issue. I think that is really an important point, is that we need to help our students become aware of their emotions and also to be able to regulate them and to use them for good. All right. A lot of people say Pear Deck. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I wrap up on time so we have time to answer questions. And I'm going to turn it back over to Chris right now. So go on ahead.
All right, well, great job. Hopefully you guys all learned some of the fantastic information, and we're going to give you sorry, I'm moving my screen around. We're going to give you some ways you can access these tools. And one of the best ways you can get to some of the information that we have is you can follow our CTE TEACH Media. We are on Twitter. Follow us at CTE_Teach. We post a lot of our, just a lot of discussions about CTE. We post a lot of the resources that we have there on a daily basis. Also our YouTube channel, we're updating it regularly for resources, and this particular webinar will be up on that channel shortly. And then also we have a podcast, and we are available on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple, all that kind of stuff. But best of all, we know that there's a ton of CTE educators in this webinar. We really want to be able to connect with you and just share what it is that you're doing for CTE in your part of the state. And the way you can do that is if you go to our bit.ly there, it's bit.ly/CTE podcast, or you can scan that QR code, and there's a short little like 3-question form that you can fill out. And again, we would love to have you on our podcast. Just share just what it is that you are doing for CTE, because I know we're all working really hard, and we want to be able to share those with educators everywhere. The next one. So you're in control now. And so we also want to encourage you guys, if we are hosting another webinar. It's Friday, May 8th at 9 a.m. And this one is just about CTE Teach resources. And we have stuff there. We have tons and tons of stuff available for you that includes technology tools, student engagement, CTE resources. And if you've not registered for that already, we are taking reservations. And again, it's just a really cool webinar. We did it yesterday, and then we're doing it again, like I said, on May 8th. And it's just a great opportunity for you guys to get some free resources, which is the best cost for being CTE educators. And for this one, I will turn it over to Melissa to maybe talk about the reports and whatnot.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Wendy, you did an awesome job. Thank you so much. I know we all, have so much to think about, and, it's hard to see something like this and just not want to jump in. And so I think our teachers, our educators here are really excited about what they just saw. So thank you so much. Just for our grant participants, just reminders that third quarter is everything's due by tomorrow. Kathy and I have been going through your logs and invoices and things, and we've been reaching out to you either via email or making notes on your logs if there are issues. So we'll be looking at those again by the end of the week and sending out any fixes that we're going to need. We will, of course, if you're having trouble getting things processed and things, just please let us know so that we know that you're just running behind versus, you've forgotten about getting these things turned in. We still have plans for our end of the year advisory webinar, which again is scheduled for May 19th at 2 o'clock. In that one, we'll need to make sure that everybody has their survey completed so we can go over those results and share kind of what we've all done with CTE Teach this year and how we've engaged with our mentees, even now in this time when we've had to get creative like we have with our students and engaging our new teachers. So we'll look forward to sharing some samples and best practices and things during that. And again, I sent out an email earlier this week. We'd love to hear how you guys are reaching out to your mentees right now and during distance learning and distance collaboration. So please continue to email me, respond to that email I sent, and let us know what you're doing there. We'll share those with the group too once we have a really good list. And then again, as a final reminder, we are in quarter 4 that does end June 30th. So keep tracking that time you're spending with your mentees, both the plans and then the communication you're doing with them. Don't forget to use those great PD resources that are available on CTE Teach for free for everyone. There's a great actual module on teaching CTE online that was created by Carla Lechuga, who's our former employee that's actually in on this webinar today. So shout out to Carla. It's awesome content that you can use with all teachers and or your new mentees that you're working with this year. And one last thing on the end of the quarter, we do have a shorter timeline for turning in fourth quarter paperwork because we have to close out our fiscal books, that every paperwork sample that we an invoice and things that we need for fourth quarter are due no later than July 15th. So again, if you have questions, concerns, feel free to email me, Kathleen Quiggle, or Chris on that, and we'll get back to you. And again, we're reviewing those logs as we speak. So thanks for hanging in with us and serving your students like you are. We know you guys are all stressed and working hard, and we just appreciate everything that you're doing for our students out there.
Yep. So now, Kathy, any questions that we can answer about this this topic or CTE Teach or anything like that?
Yes, there were some questions. Some were answered by other participants, but I'll go over those anyway, just in case somebody is on the phone and can't see the chat. From Christine, she asked if they're using a recorded version, can they still participate in these responses?
If they're using the student pay, I believe she meant the student paced version. Yes, they can. It brings them to that screen. When you can either give them the website and the code, or you can give them a direct link to the presentation, which they run through at their own pace, but it will still take them to those slides where they can enter in their responses. So you can even see how far they get. If it's a long set of slides or maybe a lot of information, you can see where they stopped responding. So you can maybe see where what they understood, and then maybe reach out if you think maybe they need more support. So the answer is yes, the student paced and the live version both allow students to give feedback.
Oh, great. Also, there was the question if there will be a recording of this sent to the participants.
Yes, so everybody who registered for this webinar will receive an email that will have this recording in it, but also a link to the slide deck so that you can get to the presentation and be able to click on some of the links and stuff that were within it. So give me a little bit of a couple of hours here and there. And then we'll have it out for everybody, and it'll be on our YouTube channel as well.
Great. Also, how long does it take to prep all this? I'm already on the computer 12 hours with 12 Zooms a week. I feel like we need to start this in 2012.
That is a great question, and I feel that in my soul. Let's just say that this took me, it didn't take a long time. If you already have your slides made, all you're doing is, think of it this way. If you were presenting live in front of your students, when would you take a pause and ask a question to check for engagement and check for learning? And that's what I do, is I go through like one topic, and then what you do is you add on the Pear Deck slide, you add on the feature, and they have templates. You can actually just click a template and it'll throw it in for you. And so if it might say something like, do you agree or disagree? And all you have to do is type the phrase at the top, what you want to ask. So it can take, maybe like 15 minutes if it's a shorter assessment. But if you're creating something new for Pear Deck, it's going to take longer. But I found that if you already have something created that you just want to add into, it's pretty short. I think maybe it's, again, depending on the length, it only takes, a few minutes just to select your slide. But I do think initially it does take a little longer because you're learning where everything is and how to navigate it. It's not really complicated, but it helps once you get the hang of where to find your templates and how to set them up. So first one's going to take you longer, but after that, maybe 10, 15 minutes, I think so.
Great. Another question is this something we can do with the class together in a Zoom, or can we put as an activity in Google Classroom?
You can do both. You can do it live as a Zoom. The only trick is if a student is doing it from like the Zoom meeting from their phone, they're going to have trouble being in the Zoom and maybe not having an additional screen to follow along. But you can also plug in that link. Again, if they can't do the link, they can still see everything you're doing. They just can't participate if they don't have that additional device or maybe the ability to click on a separate tab. So what I would do is I would say if you're able to, do it now, but if you weren't able to, they could go straight to Google Classroom afterwards and do the student paced session. So either way, they're getting the same information. And also you can record yourself over it in a Zoom meeting and, plug that in that they could listen to at the same time. So it just kind of depends on how you want to do it, but it really is very good for asynchronous and that synchronous learning.
Great. All right, there are a couple more questions. If it's self-paced, do you still need to get the data? the feedback on prompts?
If it's self-paced, do you still get the data? Is that what the question was?
Yes.
Yes, you do. It will come up for you. So when you log into your Pear Deck, you can see any session you've done. You can retrieve all of that information from your students.
Great. Someone also asked, does it allow you to make an emoji? But what she meant was a Bitmoji.
Those are a separate add-on, I believe, or a separate app. You can plug those in, but I'm a Bitmoji person, so I use them all the time. But that one is a separate add-on for you. So.
And we can do, I think we have time for about one more.
Okay, there is one more. Just can you send the registration link?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we if you go to our if I don't have your email, if you go follow us on Twitter, CTE_teach, we are continually sending out invitations to the webinars. And when you follow us on Twitter, if you just click right there on that link, it'll take you to that registration page for the May 8th webinar that we are doing about the free CTE Teach or free CTE resources. If you, again, for all of those who are in this webinar who registered, I will send this out to you. I'll send this slide deck to you in addition to the video. But if you want to access it right now, the bit.ly is available at the bottom. And what you do is just go online to bit.ly/CTE PD2. It is case sensitive. And then once you enter that into your browser, you'll be able to pull this presentation up right away. And so with that being said, thank you again so much, Wendy McClung, for giving this training and putting it at the forefront of our mind, just how important it is for us to be mindful of our students and their mental health right now as we are distance learning ourselves. And again, I want to kind of throw a little caveat in there, like be mindful of your own mental health as you're going through all of this. You are not alone. We are not alone. Whatever your favorite way of getting away is, I encourage you to go do that for a while. And that's about it. So thank you. We will get through this together. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and we will talk to you all later.
Thank you. Bye.